Chapter 9. First comes love, then comes marriage. Since she and Emma had planned every bit of the wedding, Damon had said, "Let me surprise you with a honeymoon." They flew to Thailand, which was beautiful, but the real surprise came 3 days later when they boarded a plane to Indonesia. She could barely contain the tears when she heard the word Bali. In law school, she'd torn a page from a travel magazine of a beautiful bungalow over the water in Bali. She'd scrawled the words, "You are here," on the picture and taped it to the corkboard in her room. She and Damon had never discussed it. The photo was there for so long, most days Perry didn't even notice it. But when she was exhausted or worried that she was in over her head, she'd think about the image of crystal blue waters and say to herself, "I'm there." On the islands, her husband had reserved a beachfront villa with its own private pool and meditation pergola. A carpet of white, fragrant melody poted flowers marked the path from the entrance of the villa to the bedroom. Perry took off her sandals and walked barefoot through the candlelit space. The stars beamed bright through the skylight, and although she could not see the ocean, she could hear it and smell it. "Damon," she whispered, as if they weren't alone, "how in the world can we afford this?" He smiled. "You did good, girl. You married a surgeon with no student loans." "No, seriously, look at this place," she said. "We can't take another vacation for a while," he said, more seriously, "but I figured we'll both be working so hard for the next few years, we might as well do it big." He took her hand and stepped onto the wooden deck that looked out onto an infinity pool that seemed to float right into the ocean. "This is it," he said. "This is where we start being us." In Bali, they were 12 hours ahead of New York time, so no one called. There was no need to check emails because they were up when everyone home was asleep. For a week, a private chef prepared their meals when they called for her. There was nothing to do but sleep, eat, read, and was make love even the right term? Alone in the villa, Perry stopped, wearing underwear underneath her blousy sundresses. She wanted to be ready for him. She loved the freedom of not having to fully cover up. She might be lying on the chaise lounge, reading a mystery novel, and Damon would come up behind her and put his hands on her breasts. She was ready for him, even when she didn't expect it. But the way he dove between her legs, bringing her almost to climax with his lips and tongue, drove her insane. She'd find herself tugging hungrily at his pants, anxious for him to enter her, feeling both the familiarity of his manhood and knowing that each time would be just a little different. Would she come first? Would he? How long could she last this time? In the daytime, they eyed each other playfully, coming together and apart in unexpected moments. At night, after dinner, they soaped each other in the outdoor shower, where sometimes Damon took her against the cedar wall, the smell of the wood and the Bulgari green tea soap mixing to form an intoxicating fragrance. And then they would walk naked to the pool, where they drifted lazily on the floating daybed as the sun set over the ocean, an explosion of warmth and color. "This is what it must have been like for Adam and Eve," she said, on their last night in paradise. "Before they got thrown out of the garden," Damon said, with a wry smile. "Thank you for this," she said. "Thank you for being my wife," he said, kissing her on the lips, then her shoulder, and moving on to her breast. She thought she'd never think of her body in the same way again, never not know how much pleasure she and Damon could find in each other. They were well matched. Their trip to Bali had been so blissful that she had expected to come home pregnant with twins or triplets or maybe even more. Although she understood intellectually that the number of times you had sex was in no way related to how many babies you had, she had not come home pregnant. She thought she'd never want anything more than the heavenly equation of beauty and luxury, sex and pleasure that had been their time in Bali, but it was right what they said about the brain being a discounting mechanism, because what she wanted now, more than anything in the world, was not multiple orgasms in an infinity pool. What she wanted was a baby. There was something about a fancy doctor's office that made Perry feel rich. She remembered all those years of visiting Dr. Martin's family practice office in Castle Hill. Everything was slightly run down. The pale green paint on the wall looked tea-stained after years of wear and tear. The wood paneling on the receptionist's desk was flimsy and showed clearly that the material had come from a factory, not an actual tree. The fluorescent lighting buzzed while casting its unforgiving glare. In contrast, the office for the Bryant Park Women's Health Practice looked like a floor in a sleek hotel. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the room with natural light. She recognized the coffee table with its curved wood base and glass top as an iconic Isamu Noguchi. The charcoal gray sofas were as crisp as tuxedos. Perry admired the round walnut legs of the furniture. The magazines were all brand new and strategically placed. Lamps cast soft, peaceful spheres of light around the room. When the nurse called her name, Perry let out a quick exhale. She hoped the doctor had some answers for her. It had been 2 years since she and Damon had gotten married, and on a sunny September day in Emma's backyard on the vineyard, 23 months since their honeymoon, when she'd pulled the goalie and stopped using birth control. Perry's doctor, Asia King, was the kind of happy-go-lucky black girl Perry found to be absolutely mystifying. Asia had grown up in Venice, California, the daughter of a professional surfer mom and a sounds engineer dad. She was in a perpetual good mood, and she spoke as if every word she uttered had been written in purple ink and bubble letters. "Oh my God, you look great," Asia said. "You have to tell me who made that dress." "Ulla Johnson," Perry muttered. Among her god-sisters, Perry was known as the cherry one, but she was like the before girl in an antidepressant commercial compared to Asia. "So, I have good news," Asia said. Perry paused and wondered aloud, "Am I pregnant? I just had my period 2 weeks ago." Asia made an "oh shucks" face. She said, "No, sorry, not that kind of good news. I mean that I've checked your eggs, and Damon's sperm and you are both perfectly healthy. There's no reason you can't get pregnant." Perry wanted to punch Asia in her cheerful face instead. She said quietly, "But I've been trying for 2 whole years." She noticed that she said "I" instead of "we." She couldn't help it. The baby quest had started to feel like a personal quest, like climbing Mount Everest. Maybe Damon was essential to the mission, like the guide carrying the supplies, but she was the explorer. It was up to her to scale the mountain. Getting pregnant was something only she could do. Asia clasped her hands over Perry's. I know this is hard to hear, but try to relax. The human body is complex, but your body was literally built to do this. And as far as I can tell, there's no specific reason for this not to happen for you. Just keep at it, and remember, orgasms release endorphins. Perry stared at Asia in disbelief. Come see me in 2 weeks, Aisha said. Remember, this is good news. Then she was out of the door. Perry walked out of the fancy doctor's office and up 6th Avenue. She normally loved this part of the city. She hardly ever went, but she liked to see the marquee of upcoming performers at Radio City Music Hall. She liked to smell the cupcakes baking at Magnolia Bakery and window shopping at Brooks Brothers. She needed to go to work. She needed a new go-to-work dress, like the pleated navy jacquard piece that she saw in the window. That would be a one-and-done outfit on the days when she couldn't be bothered, which was every day these days, if she was being perfectly honest. But she wasn't in the mood for clothes shopping, so she made a mental note to check out the dress online and kept going. As she approached their Central Park apartment building, she noticed their doorman, Eli, helping a woman put a car seat in the back of a taxi. She felt the familiar pang of jealousy. Why her? Why not me? That night over dinner, Perry told Damon the not great but not bad news. That is good news, honey, he said, looking at her concerned. I know, she said glumly. Hey, listen, he said. The American Society of Plastic Surgeons conference is next month in Turks and Caicos. Come with me. We can stay a few days for the conference. After the conference is over, I'll find us a villa to rent, one with an infinity pool, and who knows? Perry shook her head and counter-offered flatly. We can have sex here. Damon whistled. Wow. Way to sell it. I know we can have sex here. We can also have sex on a gorgeous Caribbean island. Sex here has become a little clinical, don't you think? All you think about is having a baby. What happened to romance, love, lust? I'm still a man, Perry. I'm too busy at work. I have that big case coming up. Maybe after, she said. He looked at her in disbelief. But the conference dates won't shift because of your case. She sighed. I know, baby, I know. You go ahead, and maybe we can take a trip together around the holidays. He said, okay, you know Jeremy will be there. She sighed. I figured. All I ask is that you try to behave like the married man you are. Damon looked at her. What the hell does that mean? Was that necessary? Sometimes I don't think you deserve me, Perry. He went into the bedroom and turned on the football game, loud. She didn't think it would ever be like this with him. Barbed threats and polite tones of voice, turning up the TV so loud that the apartment sounded like a sports bar. Those were plays from her parents' so-so marriage handbook. She wanted to do better. She aspired to be better. She loved him. She did. Lord knows they were compatible in bed. But if she was honest with herself, the skirmishes had started early. She thought back about how they hadn't even harmoniously agreed on what city they would live in. After graduation, Her from law school, him from medical school, she'd always assumed they'd moved to New York. She was a Bronx baby with Manhattan dreams. She'd made no secret of that. But at the end of their time at Harvard, Damon had gotten a job offer in Atlanta to oversee medical tourism practices internationally, including plastic surgery, at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, a prestigious government agency. He asked Perry to fly down with him to check it out. Why? She bristled. I'm never going to live in Atlanta. Damon had looked so hurt. She remembered the expression on his face. It still made her feel bad that she could have ever hurt him like that. It's kind of my dream job, Perry, he said. I grew up reading books about bioterrorism and global health crisis, like Contagion by Robin Cook and State of Fear by Michael Crichton. I think the work the CDC does is fascinating and important. She'd gone with him to Atlanta for the weekend, and Perry had been miserable the whole time. Damon kept exclaiming about the size of the black elite in Atlanta. Black people run things here, baby, he kept saying. This is the new chocolate city. But Perry didn't need a chocolate city. Not when she had the Bluffs, a seaside retreat filled with a community of sepia perfection. When the CDC recruitment liaison took them around to see houses for fun, Perry had been similarly underwhelmed. Even the houses that were technically within the city center felt as if they were deep in suburbia. Damon fell in love with a mock Tudor 4-bedroom house that had been a basketball court and swimming pool. The 2-car garage had been converted into an in-law suite with a shower and a kitchenette. This is so dope, he kept saying. This is my dream house. But Perry couldn't see it. To her mind, the house was a McMansion. What was the charm of living in a mock Tudor in the suburbs of Georgia? She hadn't said it, but it also felt a long way from the vineyard and their beloved Chateau Laveau. She tried to go up every weekend during the summer, as much of the fall as she could manage. If they lived in Georgia, she'd be lucky if she made it to the vineyard 1 week a year. That wasn't the life she imagined. That wasn't her dream. She'd tried to reason with him on the commute front. Baby, this house is 45 minutes each way to the CDC. It's 20 minutes from the nearest grocery store. The recruitment exec picked up on Perry's vibe and said, they deliver groceries these days, honey. Perry could have throttled the woman. Didn't she know this was an A and B conversation and she needed to see her southern way out of it? I grew up in a bodega culture, Perry explained. I like knowing that if I want a pint of ice cream, the store is just steps away. The service delivers ice cream too, honey, the recruitment exec said, and Perry thought if she called her honey one more time. Damon said, honestly, Perry, I wouldn't mind the commute if I could ball out on the weekends in a place like this with my friends. Perry didn't say it, but what she had been thinking was, exactly. All this place is good for is balling out with your friends. This house is a glorified man cave. She prevailed, and they'd moved to New York. She'd hit a bit of luck when Damon's friends from med school, Jeremy and Sabrina, took jobs in New York too. But the doctor crew was always traveling. The conferences and pharma junkets, which seemed too often to be scheduled in places that Perry didn't want to go. Miami, Jackson Hole, Vegas. Perry liked most cities, but she loved the quiet elegance of Manhattan, walks in Central Park, rooftop drinks at the Peninsula and Soho House. She didn't really do clubs or casinos, big arena concerts and sporting events, all things that Damon and his friends loved. Her passions had been shaped by a childhood exploring the city with Emma and Omar, so it was probably unsurprising that what she loved was Broadway and the ballet. She liked live music, but Cassandra Wilson at Lincoln Center was more her vibe than Rihanna on Governor's Island. For a long time, she thought it didn't matter. After all, didn't they say that opposites attract? But the longer she and Damon were on the outs, the more time she had to consider just how opposite they really were and what she really wanted.